Good morning, my friends. Welcome to the 10-minute book talk, where three best-selling authors talk all things bookish with you for 10 short and sweet minutes every week. I'm Marie Bostwick, and I am joined by my friends Rachel Linden, Katherine Reay, and today we have the distinct pleasure of welcoming our delightful, charming, talented author friend, Bryn Turnbull, who is here to talk about her brand new book, The Paris Deception. Hold that fabulous again. We were all just gushing on this cover. It's so gorgeous.
Thank you.
Welcome. We're so glad to have you here. Tell us a little bit about your book.
Yeah, so The Paris Deception, it is about art theft and forgery in Nazi-occupied France. And it is about two women, sisters-in-law at serious odds, who team up to protect art that was stolen by the Nazis from Jewish families all across Europe. Specifically art that was considered degenerate by the Nazis. So this is, impressionist art. It's all sort of like on the newer side for the 1940s. So basically anything that wasn't like a direct literal representation of the world. So Sophie, our first protagonist, is an art conservator, an art restorer. She's called in the book because that's the historically correct term. She is an art restorer who works within the museum, restoring works of art that the Nazis have stolen from these Jewish families. And Fabienne, her sister-in-law, is a recent widow and a political firebrand who is a brilliant artist. And when Sophie turns up at her house with a stolen painting in hand, their adventures kind of collide and converge in a very sort of fast-paced, thrillery kind of plot. There's champagne, there's romance, there's a whole bunch of technical art going on, but it's a lot of fun.
And Nazis and Paris. What's not to
and
love?
Nazis and Paris.
And yes,
yeah,
saving things. So awesome.
Saving things.
So you do, I mean, you touched upon it. You have so much truth in this book, meaning you hit the art of restoration so beautifully, and it really becomes a lot of your story. But also, I believe I read that the storyline is based on real women. I would love to know how you came across that and what inspired you to tackle the story.
Yeah, so the storyline, it's based on a real woman and a real man. So the woman was Rose Valland, and Rose Valland was an assistant curator who worked at this museum, the Jeu de Paume, which is where the Nazis took all of the art that they looted from Jewish families. And unbeknownst to them, so Rose was kind of the only French person allowed to stay on staff when the Nazis took over this museum. And unbeknownst to them, she could speak fluent German. And she took meticulous records of all the art that was going into the museum, where all the art was going once basically Hermann Göring and the Nazi high brass took it back to Germany to hang on their own walls. And she was responsible for, she was a resistance operative, and she was actually responsible for saving an entire train's worth of art from being taken out of France and into Germany. So she is in the book, but she's not the main character. She works alongside our main character, Sophie, who's kind of like our cipher for Rose and for Rose's work. The second character, who is the inspiration for Fabienne, was named Han van Meegeren. And he was a Dutch artist who in 1946 was arraigned by a court in the Netherlands for having sold a priceless Vermeer to Hermann Göring, but unbeknownst to anybody until he got up on the stand, the Vermeer was not real. It was a fake Vermeer. And he sold this fake Vermeer to Hermann Göring. And I thought, oh my God, I want to write a story about someone selling a forgery to the Nazis. And so yeah, it was very audacious. And he ended up actually in the courtroom repainting it, basically to prove that he had done this in the first place.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Also, ballsy to sell forgeries to the Nazis. Like,
oh, big time. Yeah. Big time. And particularly Hermann Göring, who considered himself quite an art connoisseur. Yeah.
Goodness. Oh, this is so fascinating. I feel like that it just has all the fun things.
Yes.
So I have
thank you.
And I think in the author world, we all know when we're writing a story, you have a lot of characters that you create, but there will always be the character that's your favorite child. And sometimes it's not the main character who someone might expect. And so I'm curious, in this particular story, who was your favorite child and why?
Oh gosh. Yeah. So in my first book, it wasn't the main character. In my second book, it wasn't the main character. And in this book, it is one of my main characters. I love both Sophie and Fabienne, and they both have like different elements of me. I would say they show different sides of my personality, but Fabienne is absolutely my favorite. She is stylish and a bohemian, and you know, very kind of outrageous in her own way, and incredibly passionate, and she holds a lot of very strong convictions. And so I really loved writing Fabienne's scenes. They just really stuck out to me.
Wow.
And she also has a love story, which I really loved to write. Yeah.
Oh, so
It's
fun. Everything. Even
Well,
a
Yeah.
Great, brave, fascinating characters, richly drawn. Really,
Thank
really
you.
such a good book. I really was like so tuned into this idea of like degenerate art, which you've sort of alluded is just as like, it's like something, you know, newer that wasn't strictly representational.
Yeah.
I've got a couple of questions. First of all, are there particular names of specific artists that you can share with us that we might be surprised was considered degenerate art? And then, you know, talk to me, like, I feel like this is such a relevant book. Are there particular parts of this story that you feel will really resonate with a modern reader, even though it's a historical novel?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, the Nazi notion of degenerate art, it kind of came out of Hitler's failed proclivities for being an artist himself. He was not a good artist. He was rejected from art school multiple times. And when he rose to power, he had very specific ideas on what was art and what was not art. As he did, you know, it was all part of the same hateful ideology that led to the Holocaust, of course. But degenerate art was basically, it was not representational. So anything that wasn't like a literal representation of the world as it was. So we're talking Cubism, we're talking Impressionism, modernism, all of these art movements, and particularly the German ones that came out of the Weimar Republic. Those were the ones that he hated specifically. So some of the artists whose names readers might be familiar with, Kirchner, Ernst Ludwig Kirchner, he was one of these artists that was considered degenerate. Picasso was considered a degenerate. Cezanne, considered a degenerate. Cezanne, Dali, Klimt was degenerate. Paul Klee, all of these artists who now we look at and we realize, you know, and even obviously at the time, people could see that art for what it was, which was a great leap forward in terms of artistic expression and artistic representation. And Hitler hated that. He felt that the world, and what it came out of for him was the notion that he felt he had created a perfect society. And a perfect society has no need for art and for expression that opens people's eyes to a different way of thinking. Because if the world is perfect, if society is perfect, why would we challenge it through different ways of thought and representation? So that's where that came from. Yeah. And you know, in terms of sort of resonance today for today's audiences, I think it is a very important conversation to have, this notion of freedom of thought, freedom of expression, and artistic representation. You know, we are seeing, unfortunately, today in the world, we're seeing book bans happening all over, and it is a really unfortunate thing, because freedom of expression and freedom of thought, these have always been the hallmarks of an open society, and today more than ever, it is so important. And so I hope that people see in this book how passionate these characters are in standing up for those freedoms and in standing up for you know, for people who are being oppressed. And yeah, so I feel very strongly about this book. I love it so much, and I love these characters.
There is a lot here to unpack. Hold up your book again, my dear. Just a wonderful book, The Paris Deception by Bryn Turnbull. Really a fascinating book on all kinds of levels. You should go out and get it right away. So before we say goodbye to you, Bryn, first of all, thank you so much for being with us today. We really
thank you.
with you. I've got one more question for you. Bryn Turnbull, what is bringing you joy today?
What is bringing me joy today? Today was bringing me joy. So I live in Toronto, and we have had like 3 straight weeks of rain, which is unprecedented for us in at this time of year. And today it is sunny, and the trees are in bud, and they're that like bright neon of like new leaves. And so what is bringing me joy is just having a lovely spring day.
I suspect there is a walk in your future after you say goodbye to us.
Definitely.
Enjoy
My
every
dog is
second.
looking at me saying,
Yeah. Well, my friends, the Paris Deception is going to bring you joy. So go out and get a copy soon. And you know what would bring me joy? If you would be back here with all of us next time on the 10-Minute Book Talk. See you then.
Thank
thank
you.
you so much. Thank you.